Welcome back, recruits. I'm Chris Nance with the Northern California Ghostbusters, and today we are going to be showing you how to install the Frutotech 28 segment LED bar graph for your Hasbro wand. And then while we're in there, we're going to be doing a little bit of other tweaking as well. So we will be installing the bar graph, the upgraded vent light, and then Greg wanted to attempt to replace the fake Clippard with a real light up LED Clippard. So let's get going. To start with, you're going to need to disassemble your wand. We have shown you how to take the bottom of the Hasbro wand off before. Link for that video will be in the description. The only thing in addition to what we show in that video that needs to happen is this little bottom plate here for the instrument bar needs to come off. And that's very simple. That's just 2 screws. You'll probably have more trouble taking the screw plugs out than you will actually taking the plate off, because it's just the 2 screws, you yoink them out, the plate comes off.
Could you use the wood screw method on those, do you think?
Maybe it's gonna be more difficult because they're solid plugs. So you would probably still want to start with like a little pilot hole for the wood screw to bite into. Once that's removed, we can actually start disassembling things to get to the parts that we need to get to. So we're going to start by disconnecting the speakers from the audio board, wave trigger, I don't know offhand. So the very last 4 terminals. The 4 terminals to the very right-hand side of your board get unplugged. That's going to be your slow blow light, and then the wiring for this momentary switch here for the barrel. So I'm also taking off the little locking mechanism on the back end here. That's the latch basically that holds your barrel in place when it stops all the way back. To do that, I just remove those 2 screws. Those first 4 wires disconnected, we want to get the stock bar graph out of there, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These 6 here, they begin just to the left of the little 2-pin JST connector in the middle of the screw terminals. Kind of trying to keep it in the cage so I don't have to reseat it again. There's the 6-wire bundle for the stock bar graph that you're going to be removing. Comes right out of the screw terminals. If you're using the stock bar graph, it gives us quite a bit more freedom of movement here as well. Once you are disconnected to this point, you've got your cover plate off of your instrument bar, you've got your wiring unplugged from the boards and everything.
Well, most of the board anyway.
Yeah. We're going to want to snip in sort of 3 strategic points on this plate here. So once here, here, without getting the wire, here, and then we're going to go here. There are plenty of different types of tools that you can use to do this. If you have a pair of tin snips, especially straight cutting tin snips like these, that would be my recommended tool. That is what I'm going to be using because it's just going to cut right through this. We're going to come in here. There and there. So this is where it gets a little hairy. So I don't want to, I guess that's... And there.
Voila.
Now we have some extra access here to all the stuff we need to get to. Next step here is to start unscrewing brackets. Just 2.
And then the vent light, right?
Yeah.
But that's hard to see.
Yeah. So this one I can actually get to. That is the very last screw that we have to take out of there. Right in the very back there. You're going to have to come in at an angle on. And definitely want to use the smallest.
Stay out of Chris's way here so he can see where he's doing this thing.
There's another screw in the bottom here holding the whole lens in place. This one is very, very difficult, but it is doable. All of the screws are out of this lens piece, the sort of opaque, plastic lens. The only thing that's holding it in place at this point is your momentary switch. So we need to take that out. I actually see one more screw here that I think is holding things in place. So now I should be able to if I can get it to, there it goes. Voila.
So basically this plastic sled is held into place by several screws. These screws, you can kind of see Chris pull them out earlier in the video. They're kind of hard to see, and you may have to move some things out of the way to completely access all of them, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, several screws you'll be removing in order to access what Chris and I are calling the plastic sled out of the wand. And don't throw it out. You'll need this later. All right, anyway, back to Chris.
So with that big plastic sled out of the way, we now have better access to the fake Clippard. And to get the first step here is, of course, going to be to get this fake one off of there. It's got nuts.
Oh, nuts.
Yeah. It's nutted from the inside. Right there, and then right there. I loosened them with the hex key.
Oh, from the front, right, yeah.
But then at this point, it's just a matter of getting those nuts to let go.
Hey.
Yeah, there's one. There's two.
Nice.
So basically, I just used the hex key to loosen up the connection to the nuts on the inside from the outside. And then once they were loose, I just kind of used my fingertip to get in there and get it off the last couple of threads, basically. I am using my automatic center punch to guide me.
Chris loves that little tool. He uses it all the time.
It is one of my favorites. We need a hole for the center post of this Clippard. A, to allow the wire to run through, but then also for that stupid post there in the center. And in order to achieve that without doing more damage than is necessary, I'm going to use a step bit to try to open it up, if I can. That looks pretty close. So these Clippards have this indexing thing, post, on the side of that post. I don't know, you get that on camera. So we just have to open it up enough to account for that. The diameter on that hole is actually pretty close to exact. All I did was run my bit in reverse for a second there at the end to remount the hole, and voila.
Oh, beautiful.
Now, we're gonna feed our wiring through. We're gonna use the stock hardware from the fake Clippard that came with the wand. We might have a wholly different problem here, Greg.
Oh, it doesn't line up with the old Clippard.
No, it is not lining up with the old Clippard. The stock fake Clippard that comes on the Hasbro wand, the footprint is just like, it's off by like a millimeter, which is enough to kind of throw you off, but not quite enough to make it impossible to do. I made sure that we had a centered up hole for the center post to run through, and that it was open enough for the center post to pass through. And then I basically just got one screw started with the nut, the stock nut, stock hardware screw, stock nut. And then that put the other one just like a millimeter off to the side. basically creating side-to-side pressure. And then, so I went ahead and got that screw started. And once I kind of got so far in, I was like, well, there's enough side-to-side pressure here between the two, non-matched parts that it's just gonna thread itself right in and basically hold through pressure alone. So I'm not even bothering with the nut on this inner screw. It's just pressure fit in there. And then between the nut on this side, the center post, and then, this kind of sandwiching everything together, I think it should be good. Oh yeah, it's not coming off.
Hey folks, Greg here. While we were in the wand, we decided to just kind of add the hat light that GP Star included in one of his kits. Now I'm only adding one of the hat lights on here, the orange one, which is the afterlife one. We're going to be replacing the light that's part of the mold itself. So all we're gonna do here is take a wired Dremel, because a wireless one was overheating way too quickly. We're taking a wired Dremel with a cutting wheel and removing the top part of it. And then Chris is going to take a drill and clean up the remaining bits and pieces of the hole so the hat light insert fits.
We were just using the cutting wheel on a Dremel to basically take the majority of that plastic off. And now we're gonna attack it with a drill bit. I just started with a number 4 bit, or a 0.209, and we're just stepping it up from there. And we're gonna keep doing that until we basically open up the hole here as far as we want it to be. Now, you could do this with a step bit if you have something that's long and thin. I would recommend using that. The only downside with the step bit is that they tend to be so much shorter that you're gonna have a lot more working parts right next to the wand. So if you're not steady-handed with your drill, you could do some damage that way.
3 hours later.
We ended at a W bit, which is 0.386.
So that's the size of the hole to fit the hat light, 0.386.
Yeah. I drilled a hole.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Very helpful.
Yeah, very informative.
So we're just gonna do the hat light in this show. I know there's other hat lights that can be replaced on the wand, but that one was just, we were here, it was open, it was clear, might as well get that one out of the way. And it plugs into a JST, which we'll get later, but so that was just a little fun bonus.
Hey folks, Greg again. My audio got borked here, which is really frustrating, and still trying to figure out what exactly happened. But once you have the hat light, we're using the orange hat light in Afterlife, you're going to put some super glue on the outer rim on the top of the hat light and then push it from the underneath of the wand through. So the outer rim, it'll be placed through the bottom and coming up the top basically. So you're not going to place this over the top, it's going to come through on the bottom and be pushed through, and the super glue on the outer rim will hold that hat light there. Now let's get back to Chris again. Apologies for all the audio VO.
First and foremost, we're actually going to go ahead and chop this into 2 separate pieces and basically take this whole center lens piece out. We're also going to eliminate this sort of fake vent light insert piece as well. So first we're going to start down here.
Tin shears again?
Yep.
Oh, it actually cuts relatively clean.
So there's that cut done. We want to basically trim just past this post right here.
Oh yeah, nice clean cut, Chris.
Yeah. So we're back to the Dremel and cutting wheel again. All I'm doing is using it to kind of chop off everything. Past the post. I used my automatic punch to create a little divot right in the center of where we're going to put our hole, and then we're going to put a little hole there to allow that LED through. Voila.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so that's that side of that bracket done. Now we need to free this side of the bracket. So I'm just getting down in the corner there, because we want to keep both of these posts. Get down in the corner there. You can kind of see where I have my split started here. We're going to go back to the Dremel again.
Just gonna clean it up a little bit, right?
Yeah, pretty much, exactly. I'm just... just cleaning up the area left behind a bit. And voila. So we should end up like that. And then the bottom piece is going to go in like so. All right, so top piece, 2 posts there, and then the bottom piece, there's the post there, and you're lining up with where the lenses fit through the top. So there's some kind of fake cast-in lenses on both these pieces, right there. And there's the hole that lens fits into. Then everything else just kind of gets screwed back into place once it's all back into place. So to get the bezel, the replacement bezel in for the bar graph, or the replacement little sled piece for the bar graph, you have to have it end up aligned over top of this post here. If you are just trimming away like you saw me do it to begin with, a lot of the time you'll end up with a bunch of excess material right in this space that's going to prevent this post from aligning. This needs to sit on top of the post, right? If you have all of this excess material here though, it's going to basically press on this lip, which won't let it sit fully down on this side, which won't let this part align with the actual screw post. So I just basically took the Dremel to it some more until I had enough clearance, a smooth enough part, basically just sort of doing little bits of cleanup as I went to sort of take away a little bit more material and smooth out that space a little bit more so that it would end up aligning where we want it to be. First of all, we're just plugging our JST connections for the replacement bar graph into place first before we seat it, just to make our lives a little bit easier. And then
So basically, this is a housing for Frutotech's LED bar graph, and there's a little overhang where the post is supposed to screw into the top of the plastic sled that we cut up to hold it in place. It's very fragile. This broke off in transit, and I had another one that GP Star included with his kit, but when Chris and I were trying to install it into the wand, that also snapped off. Luckily, Chris was so surgical with the dremeling of the sled piece, the clear plastic piece that we cut off, he was able to manage just the perfect amount of overhang to put the LED bar graph into the mount, put the mount into the Hasbro wand, and then place it over it so it kind of pressure fitted just barely, absolutely perfect. This is what worked for us. Like I said, Chris was pretty particular with the Dremel and was able to do it perfectly, so it pressure fit in without any of the adapters. Once we screwed down the 2 clear plates on the top and bottom, it kind of just stuck in the middle there and didn't want to move, which was perfect. If you do have problems, if you don't have a Dremel, there are some other parts that might help with that if it does get snapped off. It is a really sensitive piece. I know that Frutotech is currently working on a different version that's a little bit more durable and better designed, so you don't have this problem because it is a sensitive piece. But so basically that's just what we did. We inserted the bar graph, put it in, started putting things back together on top of it until it pressure fit in, screwed it all down so it was held in place. That's how we're able to keep the bar graph in. You can also use super glue if you're feeling spicy, but you might have a little bit of leakage on the outside of the wand if you do it that way. But this worked for us, and I hate my mics, and I'm sorry I have to do this because reshooting is not really an option. So, all right, back to Chris.
It can take a little bit of tinkering, basically. In our case, because I used a cutting wheel, a Dremel cutting wheel, we kind of had to progressively cut a little bit more and smooth out this part of the lens where it actually meets the sled that the bar graph fits into until it basically created its own little pressure fit for us. So the nice thing about doing it this way is everything's holding everything together. We don't have to mess around with an extra little armature that's 3D printed or anything like that.
And then we put the switch back in. And
and then we put the switch back in and screwed everything back together, or started screwing things back together. The downside with the approach that we're taking, though, is that you kind of have to go slow and very methodical with your Dremel. And be very, very precise with your cutting as to like where you're cutting and how much you're cutting.
With the LED bar in place and most of the plastic sled pieces we cut up now attached back in, minus 1 or 2 screws for some stuff we're going to put in a bit later, we can finally replace the vent light. Here's the stock vent light already out of the wand. You're going to want to unscrew the stock vent light from terminals D12, D13, and VL+. Very easy. This is what the vent light looks like. You'll be able to trace it back. There's a white, black, and red wire. You're going to unscrew those from the terminal because Frutotech's vent light gives you fresh wires.
My wire stripper does not go quite as fine as the wire gauge that's included with the Frutotech kit. That said, the insulation on the wire that he includes is pretty soft, and you can see I really just used my fingernails basically to pinch off the end. And all I did was copy Fruto's image on his Etsy store. Flip it that way so you can actually see the board markings.
So for the vent light itself, green is ground, black is vent, white is top, and red is V+. The new vent light goes exactly where the old vent light went and is held in place by a single screw that goes into its post. And then you plug it into the terminals the same place that the other red, black, and red wire were, which is white goes into D12, black goes into D13, and red goes into VL+. Now there will be an extra green wire for a ground, so you're going to want that to share a terminal with ROT negative. There'll be a brown wire coming in out of that terminal, that's your ground. You're going to want to put the green wire in there, so both wires will be in one terminal. The green wire, ROT negative. Once you have that done, the vent light is pretty much done.
At this point, we're gonna take my handy dandy hot glue gun. We're gonna try to do that. Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Just for security, folks.
Yep, just to hold the LED for the hat light in place. Because right now it's kind of like right on the edge of having enough depth to pressure fit.
Good.
In order to power this new light up Clippard, we've got to take over a 5-volt slot on our board, which basically means that we are swapping out the rumble motor for a lighted Clippard.
I'm gonna let Chris work his magic, and then he'll do a nice little VO and point to whatever he did.
Your 2 yellow wires are just going to plug in any order, the very 2 rightmost screw terminals, and then the 2 next to that are going to be your red and black pair for the slow blow light, and that's going to be red, then black. So if you're continuing from the right, going to the left, red, then black. And then the bar graph, we're no longer using the screw terminals on where the stock bar graph plugs into. We are now using 2 different JST contacts. So there's your 5-volt. So that is going to go to the JST marked with a battery on your bar graph, and then the other one is going to go to SCL SDA. If you're just replacing the hat light on the top of the gun body, that's going to hat 2, not to hat 1. In order to power this new light up Clippard, we've got to take over a 5-volt slot on our board.
Clippard is actually an LED Clippard, so it will require power if we're going to get the light to blink on it. So we simply removed the rumble motor out of the wand and plugged the red positive and black negative cables from the Clippard where the rumble motor power used to be, which is R plus and R negative. Of course, this is only if you have a custom light up Clippard. If you don't have one, you don't need to worry about this.
This is quite literally, folks, the hardest part of the whole build is just Chris trying to get
tinkering with things
it
back to get it
back together, which just takes a lot of time and patience. Nice and
tight.
Nice and no, it's not gonna work.
Yep, 3D printed part. And I need to get in under there. I started with, you may have noticed, I started by zip tying my whole bundle of wires together to make it a little bit easier to capture between the 2 arms of our 3D printed cover here. And then once that was done, I got them in between the arms and then started a screw through the screw hole on this side, captured it with my screwdriver, and then just screwed it in. And then that's just the one screw holding that whole cover piece into place.
And then,
so we have to put the latch back too.
yeah, but that's clear though.
Yep.
Clear. Nothing's getting in. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
We might have to rerun the slow blow wire though, because I kind of have it trapped above the plate and not really under the plate.
Put it under the plate. Yeah, there you go. See, you did it.
Yeah, there we go. All right.
So now we're gonna put everything back together and then do one final test.
So before, we've got our little latch that is meant to lock the barrel back into place when it's pushed all the way back. And be sure when you go to put it back together that you remember there is one of its screws goes underneath the spring like so. And that's what actually holds the whole sort of latching mechanism down and in its little channel, so it can go back and forth really securely. Now we have our spring back in place. Now we can put our spring back down. That's what allows the whole latching mechanism to work. And then we put our last screw in place to hold the spring on its post. Now we put it all back together again. And that is how you install the Frutotech bar graph, Frutotech's vent light replacement, the GP Star replacement hat light, or one of the GP Star replacement hat lights, and Retrocraft Beard's light up Clippard valve. Links to everything that we used today are going to be in the description below. A huge shout out to Michael from GP Star. We always appreciate all of the parts and things that he sends our way. And that'll do it for the GP Star kits. I believe we have done just about everything to the Hasbro pack that I want to specify there. The Hasbro packs that we are going to be doing to the with GP Star. That is not the end of our GP Star journeys though. We still have barrel LEDs. We still have the Max install. We still have some fun stuff coming from Michael. Hero build when. Thank you so much for watching the show. If you have any mods that you'd like us to review or show how to install, feel free to reach out to Greg or I. We will also have a link to our Discord in the description below. Feel free to join us there if you have any questions, comments, concerns about your own builds. We would love to see your Proton Packs and what state they are in. Don't forget to smash that like button. Drill a giant hole
In it.
Drill a giant hole in it to remove its structural integrity, and then take a hammer and just whack it a good like 5 or 6 times at full strength. Just hit the subscribe button, please. Until next time, I'm Chris Nance with the Northern California Ghostbusters, and we'll see you later, recruits.
Yes, have some.